Rain poured over the city the night Elena Cruz arrived at the Vescari mansion. The iron gates slowly opened, revealing a massive estate that looked more like a fortress than a home. 2 armed guards stood by the entrance, their eyes cold as they watched her step out of the taxi with a small bag and her medical kit. "You're the new nurse?" one of them asked skeptically. Elena nodded. "Yes." The guard chuckled quietly. "You won't last a week." She had heard the rumors already. Nurses quitting, some leaving in tears, others refusing to even speak about what happened inside. But Elena had no choice. Her mother was sick, and hospital bills were piling up. This job was the only chance she had. Inside, the mansion felt heavy with silence. Expensive paintings covered the walls, but the atmosphere was tense, like something dangerous lived there. When Elena finally entered the bedroom, she saw him. Leonardo Vescari sat in a large chair beside the window, his shoulder wrapped in bandages from a recent assassination attempt. His sharp eyes studied her like a predator observing prey. "So," he said coldly, "another nurse who thinks she can fix me." Elena calmly placed her bag on the table and prepared her equipment. "I'm not here to fix you," she replied. "I'm here to make sure you survive." Leonardo's expression darkened. He suddenly grabbed a glass from the table and threw it against the wall. It shattered loudly. Most nurses would have run. But Elena simply picked up a cloth and began cleaning the broken pieces. "If you're finished," she said quietly, "we should start your treatment." The next morning, Elena woke before sunrise and walked through the silent halls of the mansion with her medical kit in hand. The house felt colder in daylight, as if the walls themselves held secrets. Guards watched her every step, whispering among themselves as she passed. She could feel their doubt. When she entered Leonardo's room, he was already awake, staring out the window at the city below. His expression was hard and unreadable. "You're still here," he said without turning. "I said I would be," Elena replied calmly. She checked his bandages and began preparing fresh medicine. As she worked, Leonardo suddenly grabbed the tray and knocked it to the floor. Bottles rolled across the carpet. "I didn't ask for treatment," he growled. Elena didn't argue. She slowly bent down, picked up the medicine, and placed everything back on the table. "If you keep delaying care, the infection will spread," she said firmly. "Your men might fear you, but bacteria doesn't." For a moment, the room went completely silent. 2 guards near the door looked shocked. No one spoke to Leonardo like that. He turned his head slowly, his sharp eyes studying her face, searching for fear. But there was none. Instead, Elena stood straight, holding the bandages like she had all the time in the world. "You can fire me if you want," she continued. "But if you want to live, sit still." Leonardo stared at her for several seconds. Then, unexpectedly, he leaned back in the chair and allowed her to treat the wound. The guards exchanged confused glances. For the first time in years, someone had challenged the mafia boss, and survived. Over the next few days, Elena slowly learned the rhythm of the mansion. Armed guards patrolled every hallway, luxury cars came and went at strange hours, and whispers filled the air whenever she walked by. Everyone seemed nervous, as if danger could appear at any moment. Leonardo's condition was improving, but his temper remained unpredictable. Sometimes he sat quietly while Elena changed his bandages. Other times he barely spoke, watching her with those sharp, calculating eyes. One evening, Elena went downstairs to the kitchen to prepare fresh tea for his medication. As she walked past the dim hallway near the storage room, she heard 2 voices whispering behind a half-closed door. "Tonight is the best chance," one man said quietly. "What about the nurse?" the other asked. "She doesn't matter. Once the boss takes the medicine, it'll be over." Elena froze. Her heart began to race as she slowly stepped closer to the door. Through the narrow opening, she recognized one of the men. It was a guard from Leonardo's security team. Poison. They were planning to kill him. Elena quickly returned to the kitchen, pretending nothing had happened. Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared the medicine tray. When no one was watching, she carefully replaced the bottle with a fresh one from the medical cabinet she kept locked in her bag. Minutes later, she entered Leonardo's room. He glanced at the tray suspiciously. "You're late. Had to prepare a new dose," she replied calmly. Leonardo narrowed his eyes. "Why?" Elena met his gaze without hesitation. "Because someone in your house is trying to poison you." Leonardo's eyes hardened the moment Elena spoke those words. For a second, the room fell into a deep silence. The two guards near the door shifted uneasily, unsure whether to react or stay still. "Careful with accusations," Leonardo said slowly, his voice low and dangerous. Elena didn't step back. She placed the medicine tray on the table and crossed her arms slightly. "I heard them in the storage hallway," she said calmly. "Two guards talking about poisoning your medication tonight." The guards near the door immediately looked at each other in shock. Leonardo leaned forward in his chair, his sharp gaze locked on Elena's face, searching for any sign that she might be lying. But her expression remained steady and fearless. Finally, he pressed a button on the side of the table. Within seconds, 3 more armed men rushed into the room. "Bring me Victor," Leonardo ordered coldly. Victor was the guard Elena had recognized earlier. A few minutes later, he was dragged into the room, confusion quickly turning into panic when he saw Leonardo's expression. I didn't do anything, boss," Victor stammered. Leonardo slowly picked up the medicine bottle from the tray and placed it on the table in front of him. "Elena," he said without looking away from Victor, "tell me exactly what you heard." She repeated every word she had overheard. Victor's face turned pale. Sweat formed on his forehead as the room filled with tension. Suddenly, one of Leonardo's men stepped forward and grabbed Victor's collar. "Boss, we found poison in his locker this morning." The room erupted into chaos the moment the guard revealed the poison. Victor struggled in the grip of the 2 men holding him, his face pale and desperate. "It's not mine! I swear!" he shouted, his voice shaking. Leonardo didn't raise his voice. He simply leaned back in his chair, watching Victor like a judge already certain of the verdict. The quiet in his expression was far more terrifying than anger. "Search everyone who was on duty last night," Leonardo ordered calmly. More guards rushed out of the room to carry out the command. The tension was so thick it felt hard to breathe. Victor suddenly turned toward Elena, his eyes burning with panic and hatred. "This is her fault," he yelled. "She's lying. She's trying to turn you against your own men." The accusation made several guards glance suspiciously at Elena. After all, she was the outsider in the mansion. But Elena didn't argue. She simply stood beside the table, her hands steady. "If I wanted him dead," she said quietly, "I would have done nothing." Her calm words cut through the room like a blade. Leonardo slowly turned his gaze toward her. For a moment, something different flickered in his eyes, not anger, but consideration. Just then, one of the guards returned quickly. "Boss," he said, breathing heavily, "we found messages on Victor's phone. He's been contacting Marco's men." The name instantly changed the atmosphere. Marco was Leonardo's powerful underboss. Victor's knees nearly gave out. Leonardo's expression darkened. This wasn't just betrayal. It was the beginning of a war inside his own empire. The room fell into a heavy silence after the guard mentioned Marco's name. Every man in the mansion knew who Marco was, the powerful underboss who had helped build Leonardo's empire. If he was involved in betrayal, the situation was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Victor dropped to his knees, panic written across his face. "Boss, please. I didn't have a choice," he begged. "Marco said things were changing. He said you were getting weak." Leonardo slowly stood up from his chair, despite the pain in his injured shoulder. His tall shadow stretched across the floor as he walked toward Victor. The guard stepped aside, watching carefully. "Weak?" Leonardo repeated quietly. Victor's voice trembled. He said ever since the nurse arrived you've been different, distracted. For a moment, Leonardo said nothing. His cold eyes briefly glanced toward Elena, who stood near the table holding the medical tray. She didn't look away. Instead of fear, there was only calm determination in her face. Leonardo turned back to Victor. So Marco thinks I've lost control, he said slowly. Victor nodded desperately, hoping honesty might save him. Suddenly, Leonardo grabbed Victor by the collar and lifted him slightly off the floor. Then maybe, Leonardo whispered coldly, it's time to remind everyone who still runs this empire. He released Victor, and the guards immediately dragged the traitor out of the room. The door slammed shut. For a moment, the tension faded, leaving only silence. Elena stepped forward and carefully checked Leonardo's bandages again. You shouldn't be standing, she said calmly. Leonardo studied her quietly. Every nurse before her had been afraid. But this one had just helped expose a betrayal that could start a war.